During a live stream, my son joked, "My dad's just luggage we haven't checked," while comments poured in. But when the sponsor joined the call and mentioned my name, the chat exploded. He killed the stream. I'll start simple. If you're reading this, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your city, your kitchen table, your bus stop. I want to see the map light up in my head. Karachi, London, Dubai, a dorm room with ramen steam, a late shift break room with cold coffee. Because this is a story about a live stream, and it's better when I know who's on the other side of the glass. Tonight I learned how fast a million strangers can laugh at one person's name. Mine. The ring light was too bright for my eyes, but I didn't complain. My son likes it that way. Skin warmed, shadows gone, everything glossy. His desk looked like a cockpit. Dual monitors, a boom mic floating like a long-necked bird, a spill of cables, and the red LED timer counting up the moment he clicked "Go Live." I sat in his guest chair like a prop, palms on my knees, the smile that a father wears when he doesn't want to slow the kid down. He waved without looking at me. The easy way people wave at furniture they know is there. The chat started climbing. Names, flags, hearts. He read a few out loud, fast and charming, as if each message came from a cousin he'd grown up with. "Tell them where you're watching from," he said to me, still scrolling, still reading. They love that. So I did. "Where are you all watching from tonight?" I leaned toward the mic to make sure it caught me. "Tell me your cities, your rooms." I bet it's a good mix. Chat moved like rain on glass. Lagos, Toronto. A boy from Multan said he was hiding under a blanket so his parents wouldn't see the glow. A woman from Doha typed that she was in the kitchen, making tea and trying not to burn the milk. Someone wrote, "From the future," and someone else wrote, "From your basement," which made a small island of laughing emojis float up on the screen. I smiled because it felt human for a second. Then my son saw the number spike, and his shoulders settled into that famous rhythm he uses when he knows he owns the room. He was doing a roast night. I was supposed to be the surprise guest that would make the chat crazy. I'm not a celebrity. I'm a father who shows up on time. But my son had told me 100 times that the audience loves family on camera. "It makes it real, Dad," he said. "People want to feel like they're in our house." He had texted me the talking points, favorite school memory, embarrassing childhood story, then a quick Q&A, and we'd be done. Easy. I wore the blue shirt his mother used to say made me look less serious. Old men need less serious sometimes. The joke started harmless. He held up a photo of me at his 6th birthday with a paper crown sliding off my head. He called me King Crooked. The chat liked that. Then he pulled up a clip of me dancing at his cousin's wedding, the kind of uncle dance that should never see daylight. I dipped my head. I laughed at myself. It's good to learn how to bend. It's good to show your son that nothing breaks if you meet the joke halfway. He was reading the chat, skimming, grabbing the hot words. "They say you look like a retired spy," he said, smiling, "like you forgot your mission in 1998. More laughing emojis. He loved those emojis the way fishermen love the first ripple in the water. I watched him, proud and careful. His voice can warm a room. It can also light a fire. Then someone sent a super chat with a message in all caps. He saw it. He knew exactly how much it would splash. His eyes flashed, just for a second, the way a blade does when it catches sunlight. And then he said it, not reading from the screen anymore. He said it with his own mouth, like he'd kept the line waiting on his tongue for the right moment. "My dad's just luggage we haven't checked." He delivered it like a joke, his timing exact, a tiny pause before checked so it would land. The room, our living room, felt colder even under the ring light. There was a heartbeat silence, and then the chat shattered into color. Luggage emojis, suitcases, cry laugh faces, and waterfalls. "Carry on, Dad." "Baggage claim father." "Someone lose a suitcase?" "Tag him fragile." The words kept coming, multiplying, competing to be cruel and catchy at once. Heat rose up my neck into my jaw, not the kind of heat that makes you yell, the kind that dries your mouth out so fast it feels like you swallowed dust. He looked at me to see if I'd laugh. He always checks, even when he pretends he doesn't. There's a boy in him that looks for his father's eyes to see if the world is still safe. I kept my face level. That's what years teach you, how to keep the surface of the lake flat even when the ground underneath is shifting. I could hear the little fan on his PC, I could see the red timer ticking above the lens. 11 minutes, 23 seconds. The room smelled faintly of coffee and hot plastic. I could hear the neighbor's dog bark and stop, as if it too had turned toward the screen. "Good one," I said, because that's what fathers say to keep shows moving. My voice came out steady and low. Flat can be kinder than bright when you have to say something true. I didn't need to glance at the chat to know what they were typing about me in a dozen countries. I've lived long enough to understand how quickly strangers can dress a person in a costume and call it the truth. He pushed the joke a little farther. That's another thing fame teaches. If the audience laughs, keep feeding them. "He's been sitting in the corner like a carry-on," he said, grin wide. "We'll check him if there's room in the hold." He pantomimed dragging a suitcase. The chat screamed. The donations ticker blinked. He rocked backward in his chair like a king in a swinging throne. He didn't see the part of my smile that didn't reach my eyes. He didn't notice that I was breathing through my nose to keep the breath slow. You don't learn those tricks on camera. You learn them in kitchens, in hospitals, in rooms where people you love are sleeping and you don't want to wake them with your worry. "Tell them where you're watching from," I said again, quiet into the mic, like a man who is trying to pour water back into a river that has jumped its banks. "I'm curious." A few more cities floated up, thinner now, lost in the flood of suitcase jokes and applause for my son's wit. Someone wrote, "From the airport." Someone else wrote, "Gate D, boarding baggage now, LOL." My son cackled, slapped the desk. The boom arm wobbled, the mic bounced, and then steadied like a diver who had stepped too close to the edge. I don't get angry the way I used to. Age doesn't remove anger, it simply cools it until it can be carried without spilling. I looked at the camera and thought about how many lives were sitting behind it, how many rooms, how many different kinds of silence. I thought about the way people love to laugh at a single face because it keeps them from feeling how much of their own life is out of their hands. I thought about the fact that this foolish stream had a sponsor calling in later, the kind of sponsor my son bragged about with both hands, as if he had lifted the company onto his shoulders by himself. He turned to me abruptly. "Dad, give us a story," he said, eyes bright. "Give them something wild, when you were young, when you were checked." He smiled like a boy who has just thrown a stone and wants to see where the rings go. The chat began to chant, a kind of digital drumbeat. Story. Story, story. My name, typed wrong 3 different ways, bounced across the screen. I could feel, more than see, that some of them wanted me to win this round. People like balance even when they cheer for chaos. Others wanted me to trip. That is also a kind of balance. I took one breath. I let the inhale settle me, the way a chess player sits back after touching a piece and, for a second, sees the board whole. When I spoke, I kept my voice plain, like toast. "All right," I said. "A quick one." The chat fell into a hush that only shows up when words suddenly matter. It's funny how thousands of people can make a silence that feels bigger than a cathedral. "My son is right," I said. "I carried a lot of baggage in my life. Some of it was heavy." I let the sentence sit there, nothing fancy, the kind of truth that doesn't ask for applause. But I always checked it myself. A few oohs slid up the window. He had wanted me to play, and I was playing, but on my terms. I watched his face, which was still smiling, but now watchful. A cat who has noticed the bird can fly. He tried to rescue the mood. "Chat, rate, Dad's comeback," he said, looking away from me, laughing easy again. "Out of 10. The numbers came back fast, 7s, 9s, someone typed 2 just to be a pebble in a shoe. He chuckled and then went straight for the next line. "But seriously, folks, he's Luggage. We're gonna tag him priority." He tilted his head, soaking in the adoration like warm light. There are 2 kinds of attention, the kind that feeds you and the kind that eats you. It is hard to tell them apart when they both feel hot. I could have said many things. One day you will learn that jokes are knives, and even dull ones cut. One day you will realize that the person who smiles through your punchline is the same one who held your hand while you slept in the back seat and the highway went on for hours. One day ridiculous words like content and engagement will dry up on your tongue and you will be thirsty for something that doesn't come from a screen. I could have said all that. Instead, I looked at the lens, a small black pupil in a circle of light, and I let my face go calm, the kind of calm that has weather inside it. The donations ticker blinked again. He thanked a few usernames like a bartender who knows everyone's drink by heart. Dad's on fire, he said. He's smoldering. Laughter, more suitcase jokes. A new phrase started bouncing through the chat. Checked baggage, Dad. It's strange how quickly the hive can invent a nickname and make it feel like it has always been there. He reached for his glass of water, took a showman's sip, and swallowed, eyes on the camera. You all are going to love tonight's sponsor, he said, smooth. They're calling in 20 minutes. He winked. Big things are coming. The chat bubbled, guessing, speculating, typing the brand's name and little rockets like prayers. He loved that part. The rumor, the reveal, the way a single sentence could throw meat into a tank of fish. Tell me again, I said softly, to the room more than to him, where you're watching from. A few more came in, shy now, as if they were embarrassed to be real when the jokes were louder. Udaipur, a garage in Fresno, a rooftop in Jeddah with a warm wind. They anchored me. I pictured them like pins on a map, each a point of light, each a human being who had chosen to be here with us for reasons I didn't need to understand. He leaned back, pleased with himself, foot tapping time under the desk. Dad, don't go anywhere, he said, grinning. We might need to check you at the gate. More roars in the chat. He waited for me to take the bait, teeth set for my irritated laugh, the one I used to make when he was 12 and had poured water down my sleeve, by accident. I let the silence sit instead, not heavy but firm, the way a door sits closed when there's a storm outside. It is a skill to hold still when the circus is in town. It is a skill to listen past the noise and hear the one sound that matters. I was listening to the timer above the lens. 21 minutes, 12 seconds. I was listening to the faint buzz of the light and the thud of his heartbeat, which I could hear not with my ears, but with the part of me that has measured his son since he was small. I was listening to my own voice, which had learned over years to say, not now, not yet, wait. Dad's being mysterious, he told the chat, delighted. He's always like this, cold-blooded. He rubbed his hands together and laughed. He thinks he's the godfather. The chat filled with quotes and stills, tiny icons of men in dark suits. I breathed once more and let my face soften, not for the camera, for myself. If you're still with me, keep telling me where you're watching from, because this is how it began. A bright room, a fast mouth, a river of strangers, and one sentence that dressed me up as something to toss. My son threw the line. The crowd caught it. I didn't drop it or throw it back. I held it in my hand and felt its weight. I turned it once as if it were a coin I might put in my pocket, and then I set it down on the desk, carefully, the way you set a glass near the edge, so it does not fall. That was the first part. The hook, the laugh, the cut. I stayed still. I stayed quiet. I watched the water swirl and waited for the tide to turn. I did not answer right away. The joke hung in the air like a loud bell, still vibrating, while the chat turned it into a chorus. My son's laugh kept the tempo. He was happy. The audience was happy. I let the noise run past me, the way a wave runs past a rock and keeps going. I looked at the lens, a small black coin in a circle of light, and then, without warning, my mind stepped backward into a room that is gone now and will never come back. It was a kitchen with a low window and a plant that always leaned toward the light. It was the smell of cardamom and the sound of a spoon against a steel mug. It was my wife's laugh, soft and bright, not for an audience, but for us. She had a way of touching my son's shoulder when he tried a joke that did not land. Be kind, she would say, and then she would tell him something funny about herself, so he learned that laughter can be a bridge, not a knife. I can still see her there, hair tied back, a shawl at her elbows, telling him that the mouth you use to make people laugh must never be used to make the people you love feel small. When he was 6, I carried him asleep from the car to his bed after his birthday party. A paper crown slid off his head and fell on the floor. I picked it up and set it on my own head while I tucked him in because he always asked me to share the crown. I stood in the doorway and watched him breathe. My wife leaned against my shoulder and said, "He will be loud one day." She was right. She always was. The next morning, the crown was still on the kitchen counter. He ran in, grabbed it, and set it back on my hair, with both his little hands. "King of carrying," he said. And then he laughed because he liked how the word sounded. That laugh was the first sponsor he ever had. It paid for everything, or it felt like it did. His courage, his first brave steps onto a school stage, The way he looked back once to see if we were watching and then faced the crowd. Money was tight in those years. I worked a late shift and an early one. I left before sunrise and came back after dark enough times that the neighbor's dog learned my footsteps by the way my keys sounded in the lock. When he found streaming, he showed me a grainy video on a phone we could barely afford. They talk to you while you talk back, he said, eyes wide. It's like a million friends. He asked for a webcam. I sold a watch I had promised myself I'd keep for life. I bought him a second-hand mic that smelled faintly of the last owner's cologne. I built him a desk from 2 cheap cabinets and a slab of wood. We sanded together in the yard. He painted the edges blue because he said blue looked like speed. We stayed up at night and pressed buttons that did not make sense until they did. He learned to speak to a lens like it was a face. I learned to sit just out of frame and hold a mug so he would remember to breathe between sentences. When his mother got sick, he started streaming less. He sat beside her and watched old movies with the sound low. Sometimes he brought the camera into the living room and let the chat see her knitting while a game ran in the corner of the screen. The numbers dropped. He said it did not matter. He said they were old numbers and new numbers would come. She told him, "Your voice is not a trick. Use it kindly and it will feed you forever." The last night in the hospital, she made me promise to keep the house loud for him, even if she could not be there to sing along. I promised. I meant it with all the muscle left in me. After we buried her, he streamed a week later, then 2 weeks later, then every day because silence hurt him. He told stories about his mother to the chat. He laughed and cried with strangers. I sat behind the camera and answered a few messages from people who knew grief. When the first small sponsor wrote, he printed the email and stuck it on the fridge. It did not happen by magic. He worked. He failed. He worked again. He made thumbnails that looked wrong until he learned why. He learned to cut a clip, so the first 3 seconds snapped like a match. He learned to ride a joke like a bicycle and not wobble when the wind changed. I drove him to meetups at malls and stood back while kids asked for selfies. Later, when the meetups got too big for malls, I waited in the car in quiet lots with a thermos and watched the doors until he came out safe. "You're my shadow," he said once, smiling, and I said, "No, I'm your floor." He laughed and asked me what that meant. "It means you can jump," I said. "And land." Now, in this bright room, the floor seemed smaller. The chair that had been his mother's favorite was empty. The blank space pressed at the edge of the screen like a low cloud. He leaned toward his audience and invited them to roast me, as if he were inviting them to dance. "Give me your best lines," he said, eyes shining. "Go hard." He lifted his eyebrows and gave them permission to cross every line, because it was just content, and content is rubber. Words bounce, right? He threw up a poll on the screen. "Is Dad carry-on or checked?" he asked, laughing. "Vote quick." The numbers jumped. Checked, checked, checked. A few carry-on votes, either kind or cruel, I could not tell. He pinned a comment that said, "Tag him fragile." He read it twice for effect. The chat rolled over itself with joy. His wife walked into frame and waved to the camera without looking at me. She is a smart woman, and I'm not blind to the ways she takes care of the details that make their days work. Tonight she had that tight smile people wear when they enjoy the party a little too much. "Uncle's trending," she said, and then she covered her mouth in fake shock. "Oops, Dad." The chat loved the slip. She slid her hand across my son's shoulder and squeezed the back of his neck like a bell rope. "Chat, be nice," she said, and the way she said it told them she did not mean it. She read a line from the screen and widened her eyes. Someone said, "Check him at gate B." Oh my God. She laughed and then took her phone out for a picture. I turned my face away without making it look like I had. My son hit a sound effect button. An airport announcement voice played, "Passengers, please proceed to baggage claim." He let it run under his talk like a backing track. "Dad, do an impression of a misplaced suitcase," he said. He waited, smiling, a man who expects his dog to bring the stick back. I took a breath and said nothing. He liked that even more. "He's in character," he told the chat. "Method luggage." Donations flashed. "If we hit the goal," he said, turning the bar bright on the top of the screen, "we'll put a luggage tag on his shirt." The number climbed fast. People who had never seen my face before threw small coins into the fountain just to watch the water move. He leaned sideways and pretended to whisper, then spoke louder because whispering does not pay. "Dad, say priority." The chat typed priority like a chant. Say it in your scary voice, he said, eyes on the screen, hungry for the beat where crowd and host breathe together and the room breaks like a wave. I heard the fan, the neighbor's dog, the timer, 27 minutes, 18 seconds. I said in a flat voice, no. He laughed as if I had said something clever on his show. Oof, he told the camera, hand to his chest. He's ice cold. Someone check if he's breathing. The chat spun. He's not even a duffel bag. More like lost and found. Does he come with wheels? There is a skill to laughing with the world, without laughing at the people who made your world. Tonight he forgot it. I watched and stayed still. My phone buzzed, a message from him, sent with his left hand while his right still controlled the stream. Play along or step out for a bit. It was not cruel, it was efficient. The way producers talk when the show must move. I looked at the words, remembered that this was his stage, paid for by his work and his hours and the energy he had learned to call up on demand. I put the phone down on the desk softly so it would not make a sound. I did not step out. I sat back in the chair and let my hands lie open on my knees like the hands of a man waiting for a train that he knows will come when it comes. A small memory rose and surprised me with how clear it was. Years ago, we flew once, all three of us together, because my wife wanted to show our son the sea that matched the blue in his paint. At the baggage carousel, he stood on his toes and watched the belt spin. A suitcase came around with a red ribbon on the handle. He clapped because it looked like a present. When ours finally appeared, old and scuffed, he ran forward to grab it and almost lost his balance. I caught him by the shoulder. Not so fast, I said. My wife smiled and said, we are not luggage. We are the journey. He repeated it all day, turning the words in his mouth because he liked how they felt. In the hotel that night, when the sea made its slow breath against the shore and the window was open to the smell of salt, he whispered it once more as he fell asleep. I lay awake and held my wife's hand and felt as rich as any king who ever sat under a bright crown. The donations bar hit its goal with a bright chime. My son's wife peeled a paper tag from a stack on the desk and waved it for the camera. Priority, it said in bold letters. She hesitated, maybe a half second, and then handed it to my son like a nurse handing a doctor a tool. He stood up, turned toward me, and for a very small moment, our eyes met without the lens between us. He did not look cruel, he looked excited. That is not the same thing, but excitement can run people over if you do not learn where the brakes are. He pressed the tag to my shirt gently, almost tenderly, and then turned the tenderness into a joke before anyone could see it. There we go, he said, checked and cleared. The room laughed again. The chat exploded with screenshots. He's branded. He's official. Send him to Gate C. I did not touch the tag. It felt light. It felt like paper. It felt like nothing and like something at the same time. He switched segments. Speed roast, he said. I read, he reacts. He pointed to me as if I were a door, and he were a magician about to open it and reveal a new room. Dad, when did you realize you were extra baggage? He read from the screen. He looked at me, expecting me to do the work for him and make the line funny so he would not be the only knife in the room. I said, when I learned to carry what others could not. A few oohs again. He smiled and moved on. Dad, what's your favorite airline? He waggled his eyebrows. Sons and Sons? That landed big. He kept going, faster now, like a man running downhill because the hill is pulling him. Dad, can we store you overhead? Dad, weigh in. Dad, what's your max capacity? It became a rhythm more than a conversation. He was not talking to me anymore. He was surfing, and I was the wave. The little sponsor in 5 clock appeared on the screen, lower right, clean white numbers ticking backward. He rubbed his hands. Okay, he said, breathless. You're going to lose it when you hear who we're talking to. The chat guessed names. Some were silly. One was right. He didn't say it. He kept the reveal for the beat that pays. His wife leaned in and said, low enough to sound private, but loud enough to be heard, remember, they said they want young energy tonight. Keep it bright. She glanced at me and then away. I watched my son nod without thinking. I watched him put the mask back on so fast it looked like his face. I knew the sponsor. I did not say it. I knew the old contract with a company that changed its name twice and kept its soul. I knew a handshake that happened before my son had learned to spell the word audience. I knew because I had been there when the first real stone was laid in a building that now showed up in drone shots in other people's videos. Knowing something and saying it are different acts. Tonight I chose one and kept the other in my pocket. Not yet, I told myself, in the old voice I used when my son was small and wanted to run into the street to catch a ball. Wait for the green. He checked his hair in the monitor. Quick. He straightened his mic. Quick. He turned the ring light up. One click, so the shine on his cheek looked like morning. Dad, he said, cheerful and sharp, if the sponsor asks who packed you, be honest. He laughed at his own line. Chat, he said, get ready to spam rockets. The chat typed the word ignite over and over. He loved that they obeyed. He pointed at the screen like a conductor and brought the invisible orchestra in on time. I looked at the timer. We were at 34 minutes and some seconds. The bell would ring soon. I closed my eyes for 1/2 second and saw my wife looking amused, as if someone at a party had just told a joke at her expense, and she was deciding whether to laugh or to leave. She had a move for that moment. She would tilt her head and say lightly, "Careful." It wasn't a threat. It was a reminder about the line between play and harm. I opened my eyes and breathed in the smell of hot plastic and coffee and the faint perfume his wife wears that is meant to smell like rain. The clock hit 0. The call window chimed. His smile stretched as if he had hooked a fish big enough to show the whole village. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, hand open, voice warm enough to melt ice. "Please welcome tonight's sponsor." The screen split. A new face appeared, well lit, professional, the kind of face that knows how to look straight at a lens and make everyone on the other end feel chosen. The chat jumped like fireworks. Names, guessing, recognition. Then the sponsor said hello, and then he said my son's name, and then he said mine. He said my full name in a tone that meant we had stood somewhere together before, in a hallway, in a boardroom, in the mouth of a crane where metal meets sky. My son's wife stilled. My son blinked, small, quick, like a bird that hears glass. The chat did not just move, it detonated. The sound in the room did not change, but the air did. My son's smile stayed, it had to. But some piece of it loosened at the edge. He looked at me without meaning to. I looked back with the same calm I had been holding since minute 11. The sponsor kept talking, casual and warm, and it was clear to anyone who knows the language that he was not speaking to a stranger. He was speaking to the man his team had asked about before this very call. He was speaking to a person who had shaken hands with him years ago over a floor plan when the brand was just paint on a plywood sign and a hope. My son covered with humor because that is his shield. "Look at that," he said brightly. "Even the sponsor knows my dad's a bag to be checked." He tried to pull the room back onto the track he had laid, but the wheels had found a new rail and the train was moving that way whether he liked it or not. The chat went from jokes to questions to theories at a speed that would make a sober man dizzy. "How does he know Dad? Wait. Is his dad that guy? No way. Caps lock, no way." My son's foot tapped under the desk, fast now, not in rhythm, but in pieces. The sponsor smiled, oblivious to the shock he had just set loose. Or maybe not oblivious at all. "Good to see you again," he said to me, into the lens, into the world. "It's been a while." I felt the weight of the paper tag on my shirt, as if it had just been pinned. I did not touch it. I did not peel it away. I did not need to. Some labels fall off on their own when the story changes. I sat still in the bright light, in the room my son built with his work and his will, and I let the new sound rise. It was not laughter. It was not applause. It was the noise a crowd makes when they see a door where they thought there was only a wall. The sponsor said my name like it belonged in his mouth, not as a novelty, but as something he had used in sentences before, in rooms with glass walls and men who wore shoes that never touched dust. The chat went white hot. Lines flew by so fast you could not read them, only feel their push, like standing near a train that does not slow down. My son laughed on reflex, the performance smile still lit, but a small flicker happened at the corner of his mouth, like a candle that remembers wind. I kept my face calm, not frozen, calm like a lake that knows its depth. "Good to see you," the sponsor said again, and he looked straight into the lens when he said it, which meant he was looking at me and everyone else at the same time. "Been too long?" He had one of those voices that sound expensive because they have been trained to go nowhere they aren't invited. My son shifted in his chair. "Yeah, wow," he said brightly. "Small world, right?" He looked at me, quick. "Dad, you two know each other?" "In another life," I said, flat and easy, the kind of line that feeds curiosity without giving it sugar. The chat hit me with question marks like hailstones. How? When? Is he that guy? My son's wife put her hand on the back of his chair again. The ring light hummed the way lights hum when they get warm. The sponsor smiled like a man who has practiced smiling in mirrors for conferences. "We ran into each other at a very loud place once," he said. "I learned something useful." He looked at me again and added, "You told me to measure twice." It was a small sentence, but it carried a long memory behind it. Metal against metal. A floor plan rolled out over a table. A morning when the wind made the crane cables sing like low guitars. My son bobbed his head as if this were a casual anecdote, nothing more than a neat coincidence. "Very cool," he said, eyes flicking to the chat. "So, let's talk about tonight's campaign." "We're excited." "Before that," the sponsor cut in, still smiling, still smooth. "How are you, sir?" He meant me. The chat built a second wave. The words sir and dad in the same sentence made people type faster, as if a gear had shifted from comedy to something else and the car had jumped forward. "I'm well," I said. "And you?" I kept it trim. Every extra word would not buy me more respect. It would buy me more noise. He nodded. "Busy," he said. "But good busy." My son laughed too loudly, like a drummer who has lost count and comes back in on the wrong beat. "We love good busy," he said. "Speaking of busy, chat, spam those rockets. They know your father," someone wrote, and the line held on the screen like a nail hammered halfway. Others followed. "Why does the sponsor sound respectful? Is dad not luggage?" Plot twist. He tried to skate over it. He launched into his sponsor read, voice on autopilot, hands moving like he had practiced them. Name, value, call to action, discount code he had made up that morning, and tested for the right mix of letters and numbers to look friendly. The sponsor listened politely. Then he did something small. He said, "We're proud to be here." And he looked toward me again as he said, "proud." And the look had weight. It was not a look a vendor gives to a host. It was a look a colleague gives to a colleague he owes. I could have taken it right then, the moment on offer. I could have said the name of the meeting room on the 8th floor where we argued, gently, about patience. I could have said the name of the contractor who tried to shave steel to save a day, and how I told him no, and how the sponsor watched me say it and later thanked me because time saved is often trouble borrowed. I could have unrolled every one of those days across this bright desk, like old blueprints, and let the chat read the lines. But that is not how a father wins, not by flooding, by tides. "Nice," I said. "Let's hear about your product." It sounded like I was keeping the show on its rails, and maybe I was. My son looked relieved. People always are when a calm voice gives them a lane. He launched back into the bullet points. He was good. He hit the benefits, the features, the testimony, the joke about a use case so ridiculous it circled back to plausible. The chat climbed again, but it was a different climb. They weren't feeding on my label anymore. They were watching me for tells, the way you watch a high-stakes table to see whether someone is bluffing. I gave them nothing but breath. While he spoke, my mind stepped through doors only I could see. A meeting over tea in a noisy lobby. A site visit in a hard hat, where the sponsor learned how to listen to old men who smelled like welding and truth. A lunch late enough to be called dinner, where somebody asked me if I wanted my name on a plaque, and I said, "No thanks." Because names on plaques get dusty, and I have always preferred the sound of a building when it breathes. That day, the sponsor wrote my number in his phone under a name that would not stand out. He asked if he could call for advice when the road turned. I said, "Sometimes. A favor is a small currency. You spend it carefully." "Dad," my son said suddenly, snapping me back, "tell the chat your favorite feature." He smiled like a stage light. He wanted to bring me safely into his script, to make me say words that fit the segment so his metrics would make sense later when he stared at them at 2 a.m, anxious and wired. I leaned toward the mic just enough so he would not accuse me, later, of sabotaging his show. "My favorite feature," I said levelly, "is that they deliver what they promise." The sponsor's eyebrows raised a fraction, the way a man's brows rise when a friend at a party speaks a phrase only they both understand. The chat read it their way. "Dad's PR trained. He's media ready. Look at him." The truth is, I was not trained. I was just not in the mood to be sloppy. His wife chimed in. We love that, she said to the sponsor, a bright professional smile, and we're really looking forward to the year ahead. She let the word year hang. The sponsor mirrored her brightness. We are too. Then he added lightly, we like relationships that last. He said it with the ease of a sentence he has said often and meant only sometimes. Tonight, he meant it. My son heard the word year and straightened because year means security. It means money you can build a life on, not just a month of noise. He bounced a little and shot me a quick look, as if to say, see? Be cool. Do not say anything weird that might spook them. He did not have to worry. I have never been a man who kicks at his own table. The chat, having tasted the shift, became a mix of gossip and speculation, and the kind of nervous laughter people make when they sense they are in the presence of something bigger than their joke. Dad pulled the sponsor. He knows someone. He is someone. Wait. Tell them what you told me back then, the sponsor said suddenly, and even though he was talking to my son, his eyes touched me for a moment. About not confusing noise for growth. It was an odd sentence to bring into a live stream where noise and growth often look like twins. My son blinked and did an impression of recognizing his own earlier wisdom. Oh yeah, he said. We're big on that. He laughed too much at nothing. The sponsor nodded, then pivoted back to a safer script. But the room had heard it. The room was learning a new language, the grammar of who actually mattered to whom. I could feel the small pride I never show, warming my chest the way tea warms your hands when the kitchen is quiet and everyone else is sleeping. Not pride that the sponsor knew me. Pride that I had not let myself answer cruelty with rage, that I had stayed steady long enough for the truth to arrive on its own feet. You can break a person with a moment. You can save a moment with a breath. The sponsor wrapped his pitch. He mentioned the code again. He promised something small and free, which is often what people really want. A token, a sign, proof that they were here. We're honored to partner, he said. And he meant it thickly now, not in the thin way men say honored when they mean paid. Then he did the politest thing he could have done on a night like this. He asked me a question about nothing and everything at once. Sir, he said, what would you say to young creators about keeping their families part of the journey? My son froze for one click of the metronome inside his skull. His smile went hard at the edges. He tried to make a joke. Don't check them, he said, too fast, like tripping. It landed like a stone dropped in a fountain. The chat did not pick it up. The sponsor looked apologetic without dropping the line. I felt the old weight of my wife's hand on my forearm, the way she would give me pressure enough to say, go ahead. I cleared my throat once. I'd say, I began, and I made sure my words were not a sermon, not a riddle, just a path laid stone by stone. That you can make strangers laugh without making your own people bleed. The internet is a loud room, and it's easy to forget who set your chair at the table. I kept my voice gentle, not to win points, but because my son is my son. If you want them with you when the lights go off, treat them kindly when they're on. I stopped there. Not because I ran out of things to say, because I did not want to use up more air than belonged to me. The chat slowed the way a crowd slows when someone stands on a box and says something true in a square. It did not go silent. It did not turn holy. It simply shifted weight from one foot to the other, the way people do when they have remembered their bodies in the middle of a show. A few comments wrote facts and real. A few others tried desperately to restart the joke machine, checked dad got bars, baggage philosopher. They sounded like kids who want the teacher to go back to throwing candy. My son laughed in a way that said he had decided to interpret my words as content. He thumped the desk lightly. Dad's spitting wisdom, he said, saving face, saving tone. Clip that. He gestured to his editor as if the editor were here, and not a man who would watch this later with red eyes and a tired back. He turned to the sponsor. We keep it real here, he said, aligning himself with my sentence without letting it change him. It is a talent, that alignment. It keeps you from crashing in public. It also keeps you from changing in private. The sponsor nodded, a small smile ghosting. That's why we're here, he said, and then he glanced off screen at someone we could not see, the way people do when a manager or a legal person has lifted a hand. We have a hard stop, he added, but before we go, we wanted to express our appreciation. He used the company we, and then deliberately he used a different we. Some of us, he said, go back with your father. It means something to us to do this right. He did not explain what right meant. He did not have to. My son's wife said, "We appreciate you." She was good at this. She lifted the weight an inch off my son's shoulders without letting him feel it. "We'll send over the deliverables calendar tonight," she added, a pro to the last word. The sponsor thanked them, thanked the chat, thanked me again by name. Then he signed off with a wave that was polished, but tonight had a thumbprint in it, a human smudge that meant he was not just here for numbers. The split screen closed, the call window disappeared. We were back in the bright room, with our light and our smell and our timer. For a second, nothing moved. Then my son clapped his hands once and tried to catch the energy before it fell. "That was huge," he said. "Chat, that was huge." He grinned at the camera and read donations. He made a small joke about me networking and pretended to be proud, which is another way to be afraid. He was trying to keep the show in his hands. He did not see that his hands were wet. Inside me, the cold heat settled into something clear. The line had moved, I had not moved it. I had simply not moved when others pushed me. There is a difference. I sat back and let my shoulders soften. The paper tag on my shirt still said priority, but it had become a prop from an earlier scene. The chat's eye had changed shape. It did not see me as luggage now. It saw me as a door that might open. The suspense was not about whether I would get angry. It was about what else I knew, and when I would decide to let that knowledge stand up. "Dad," my son said, voice up and lively, "do a victory lap." He wanted to turn the moment into a meme, and then into a segment, and then into a clip with a caption. He wanted to domesticate it, to put this heat into a bowl and feed it to his metrics. "Tell them how you're feeling." He was giving me a chance to play safely, to throw a soft ball back so the game could go on. I could hear the old part of me that wants peace, that wants to step into the space your child offers and make it easy. I sat in that feeling, and then I let it pass. "Grateful," I said, "and patient." The words were plain, but patient has a taste if you have ever sat on a truth and let it sleep, because waking it early would only make everyone stumble. The chat typed, "Patient," like a room full of people craning their heads toward the same sound. My son laughed too quickly. "He's always patient," he said. "It's his whole brand." He turned to the camera. "Next segment," he said, and reached for a button that would take us back to a game where the stakes were small and the colors were bright. I let him press it. I let a cartoon landscape fill the screen and wash the room with blue. He started talking fast about a new level. He invited the chat to help him choose a path. He was good again, relaxed. The kind of relaxed people show when the boat that almost tipped has righted, and they can pretend the wave was never huge. But the chat did not return fully to the cartoon. Every few lines, someone typed my name. Every few lines, a question appeared about history, about paper, about a hall with glass walls. The undercurrent hummed. My son saw it. He tried to pretend he did not. He kept his voice bright and his eyes sad. He made a joke about me being a final boss in a game called Airline Dad. He laughed at himself and asked the chat to design my attack. They tried. They imagined luggage straps like whips, a wheelie bag run, an ultimate move called baggage claim. Their jokes felt tired, like people telling stories after the party is over, because they fear the quiet that comes after everyone has gone home. He kept them going because he does not sleep well on nights when the quiet is deep. "Dad," he said, as if suddenly remembering, "the format required it." "What do you think?" I looked at the little pixel man on the screen. I looked at the numbers at the top, the count of people, the money, the hearts. I looked at my son's face, which I have known from the moment it was a blur on an ultrasound tab now, when it is a castle other people want to climb. "I think," I said, "we should not miss what just happened." The sentence made the room tilt. He laughed it off. "We're great at moving on," he joked. "It's healthy." He tried to switch levels. The chat did not follow quickly. They hung back at the previous door, peering in. You can hear a room hesitate if you have listened long enough to rooms. The timer ticked. We had crossed 40 minutes. I could feel the plan I had not planned start to show itself to me, the way a road appears as fog lifts. There are moments you do not earn, but you can still use if you are careful. I did not want to hurt him in front of strangers. I did not want to play judge and jury in a theater he built with sweat. I wanted simply to put weight where weight belonged. The sponsor had done part of the job by saying my name. The rest would be done with a few quiet choices, placed like stones. "Let me take a minute," I said at last, and I did not ask for permission because asking would have turned the moment into content again. I leaned forward to say thank you to the people who told us where they're watching from. The chat, which had been half running, half stumbling, slowed to listen. We went back to the beginning in a way. It is the only way to move forward when you have bent the path. Return to the first step and make it matter. "I heard Multan under a blanket," I said. "I heard a rooftop in Jeddah. I heard a kitchen in Doha. I heard someone on a bus in Karachi where the night looks like a river." I saw a few flags pop up again, not as taunts, but as signs. "We see you," I said. "I see you." Then I looked at my son, not the camera. "And I see my boy," I added, soft enough to make his name private. "A man who worked hard." I let that praise sit there so no one could say later that I took a victory lap around his effort. "I also see a line," I finished, as plain as a cup of water set on a hot table. "We'll keep it." He nodded as if we had agreed in advance, as if this sentence were part of his format. "We love lines," he said, going with it, grateful for anything he could shape into content. He does not know that content is a river that will drown you if you keep trying to drink the whole thing. He will learn. I prayed he would learn gently. The chat typed line and which line and OMG the line. The mystery fed them more than the jokes had. They quieted to listen for the next shoe. I did not drop it. Not yet. What I did instead was simple. I reached up and touched the paper tag on my chest. It was not a dramatic gesture. I didn't rip it away. I just held it between two fingers and looked at it the way a man looks at a leaf that fell on his shirt while he was walking under a tree. Then I let it fall onto the desk. It made the smallest sound, a whisper of paper on wood. The mic picked it up. The room heard it. The chat wrote, "Oh." My son looked at the tag as if seeing a prop from a comedy he had outgrown in the last 10 minutes. He opened his mouth, he closed it, he swallowed. "Okay," he said, and his voice was human, not host. "Okay." He glanced at the timer, and then at the notes on his screen, and then at me. As a boy glances at the door when he hears his mother moving in the hall and knows he has been too loud. "We're going to, take a quick break and then come back for the game," he said to the camera. He hit a stinger that played a tune he uses when he needs a breath. The screen went to a "be right back" card. The chat screamed and purred and speculated and told each other to clip it and argued about what a father is allowed to do on his son's show, as if the law had a subsection for blood. During that small pause, he looked at me like a boy and said, "Quiet. What do I do?" There was no audience in that question. It was just my child. I put my hand on the table between us, palm up, as if offering him a bridge. "We finish," I said. "Well?" He nodded. He looked at the door and then back at the screen we had made together with our hours and our stubbornness and our love. He took a breath. He turned the card off. The stream blinked back to life, and the room was new. The show was still his. But the air, at last, was ours. When the "be right back" card disappeared, the room came back with a new shape. The ring light still hummed, the timer still marched, the boom arm still hovered like a crane over a busy site, but the air did not press on my chest anymore. He cleared his throat and slid the smile back on, the practiced one that had seen him through bad microphones, angry chats, and nights when the numbers didn't climb. "We're back," he said lightly. "Quick stretch, hydrate, we're good." His wife nodded behind the monitor, that efficient nod that moves a show forward. The chat fired in greeting bursts and then settled into a scanning buzz, waiting to see what animal exactly had walked into their clearing. "Before the game," I said, not loud, not soft, just there. "A minute." He looked at me and then at the camera and did a quick calculus behind his eyes. Deny the minute and look petty. Give the minute and hope it turns into content. He spread his hands like a gracious host. "A minute," he said. "Dad wants a minute. Chat, be nice." The warning was a ribbon tied to a knife. I nodded once because a nod is enough when you intend to do only what you say. "You heard someone say my name," I began, and the chat lifted, the way a sea lifts under a moon you cannot see. "You heard respect in his voice. That is because we have stood. Together at places where noise does not help you. I let the sentence walk to the edge and stop. Years ago, before there was a logo anyone recognized, before there were rockets and chats, a team asked me to look at a plan and tell them where it would break. He kept his face neutral. His wife's mouth made a tight line that said, "Careful." I walked their floor, I continued. I told them to measure twice and not confuse shouting for growth. The sponsor's earlier words, "Don't confuse noise for growth," resurfaced in the room like a fish turning in clear water. The chat threw up fragments. Measure twice? Growth? Did he build it? But more of them just watched, because the way I said it told them I would not be dragged into a fight. I was laying stones, not flares. They listened, I said simply. And when people listen, things stand. I put my hands flat on the desk, the wood warm under the ring light heat, and I looked into the lens so that every boy under his blanket and every woman stirring tea and every man on a bus swallowing night would feel that I was looking at them and not over them. Tonight, listening is still the work. He laughed, bright, trying to varnish it. Dad's got TED Talk energy, he said. Clip it. He reached for the segment switch, the button that would change the screen to the cartoon world where consequence is small and repair is a single press of restart. I let him hover over it. Then I said, "Not yet." The word was too plain to be a command, but it carried weight. He let his hand fall. I did not make him small. I made the moment clear. We made a mistake, I said, including myself, because a father's job is to step into the weather first. We let laughter turn into labels. We did it in front of strangers who would repeat those labels like a song. That is on us. I picked the paper tag up between two fingers. It was already losing its stick, the glue soft from the heat. The joke was small. The damage would not have been. A million rooms felt a little quieter. Not silent, silence doesn't sell, but quieter in the way kitchens do when someone sets down a cup and tells the truth in a low voice. He exhaled through his nose and tried again to steer. Okay, he said. We reset. We move. He glanced at the donations bar as if it might give him instructions. It blinked back, useless. I turned the tag over so the inked word faced the wood. You asked me to say priority, I said. I will. I tapped the desk once with the tag. Respect is the priority. I wasn't performing. I was placing a frame around a picture that had been hanging crooked. His wife shifted, a sound like a bracelet against a cup. Chat, hearts for Dad, she said, buying us time. The hearts came. They always come when you ask. It is one of the stranger kindnesses of the age. If you ask for love, a machine will show you symbols of it until you forget what the real thing feels like. He leaned back, recovering his angle. We love respect, he said with a grin that asked for permission to move on. We're all about respect. He looked at me. A flicker, the boy behind the brand, the child under the paper crown, showed and was gone. Game? In a minute, I said again, and now I let the next stone be heavier, because there is another piece you should know if we're going to keep this honest. He looked at the chat like a man looking for cover in a storm. The chat watched like a stadium that has guessed a penalty is coming. The brand you just met, I said, owes me nothing. We shook hands a long time ago and then walked our separate roads. But there's a document somewhere that says, in language only lawyers like, that I get a call when they're thinking of putting their name in a room I'm sitting in. He went still. His wife's chin lifted a degree. It wasn't a threat. It was a disclosure. The way you tell someone at a dinner table you have a nut allergy before the plates arrive so no one has to call an ambulance. He started, then stopped, the host words jamming against the son words. You get a call? Sometimes, I said, when it touches what we built together, when it might ask me to sit in a room where my name would be used as a prop for a laugh. I let the last word sit. I asked for that clause after we opened the second floor, not for control, for care. Your mother would have asked for the same. He swallowed. Behind the camera, the other rooms leaned in. So you knew, he said. Tonight? I knew they would call, I answered. I didn't know you would ask the world to call me Luggage. I did not harden the sentence. It wasn't a knife. It was a measuring tape laid along a board. He looked down at his hands. For once, he did not look at the chat for a cue. I was running the bit, he said. A small, defenseless boy's explanation wrapped in a grown man's tone. It is hard to realize in real time that you have been using the people you love to power your lights. I did not make him stay there long. I pulled the next stone from my pocket and set it carefully. They called me this afternoon, I said. They told me they wanted to do right by you. I said, do right by him by not confusing noise with growth. Do right by him by not asking him to cash in people he cannot afford to lose. I looked into the lens again. They agreed. A few comments tried to laugh it away. Dad's a secret lawyer, Dad's Batman, Dad's HR, but most of the room held. You can tell when the crowd has tasted a different kind of story and wants to see where it goes. It isn't the hunger of dunking. It's the hunger of learning the map you thought you knew has roads you never saw. He wet his lips. What now? He asked, private voice in a public room. The question carried all of him, the man who hustled, the child who needed, the host who had to land a plane without spilling the drinks. He was asking for a cue. For once, I would give it. Now, I said, we do the thing your mother would have done. He looked at the empty chair that had been hers and went very still. We end early, I continued. We leave something on the table. We call it grace. The chat stuttered. End early? Nobody ends early when the graph is climbing. Ending early is an old-fashioned move, like tipping your hat to strangers on a train. Ending early says, there is a world after the show, and I want to meet it standing up. He gave a quick, panicked laugh. We don't end, he said. We reset. We do the game. He saw my face. Not hard, not immovable, just certain. The way the horizon is certain. He stopped. You want me to cut it, he said. And the words made sweat bead high on his lip, because to cut was to admit that the 30 seconds of laugh that had felt like a soft throne were, in fact, a small ugliness you do not build on. I want you, I said, to choose your future over your momentum. I looked at the red square at the top of the screen, the one that says live, in a color that always looks a little like a warning. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do on camera is stop. He searched my face for punishment and found none. He searched for pride and found a quiet that included it. His wife spoke finely, professional again, but softer. If we end now, she said, doing the math fast, we'll lose. She didn't say money, she didn't say face. She said, we'll lose the room. You'll keep the house, I replied, just as soft. It was not a metaphor, it was a recall. A long time ago, a small boy had called me king of carrying. Tonight I would carry again, but not on my back, on my breath. He looked at the chat. It had stopped being a river and become a lake, wide and watchful. If we cut, he said toward the lens. Are you coming back? 1,000 tiny yeses, and we'll be here, and respect spammed up like birds lifting from a field. A few begged for the game. A few told him not to let Luggage Dad win. He winced at that and then, for the first time tonight, let the wince show on his face. Not anger, I told him. Something colder. He nodded, remembering the line I had used all his life when I wanted him to understand that my quiet was not absence. It was presence with a steady hand. He reached for the mouse. His fingers trembled once and then steadied. He looked at me. It was the look you give the person who taught you how to swim the first time you decide to dive in water you cannot see the bottom of. Say something, he whispered. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. I leaned in just enough to be in the exact center of the frame, not to steal it, to hold it still. Thank you for your time, I said to the rooms across the world. We're going to keep our line and end here. Take care of your people. Measure twice. Don't trade respect for reach. I paused, then added the one line only our house knew. We are not luggage, we are the journey. Somewhere in the chat, buried under emotes, came a single line. His mother said that. A heart. Then another. He looked at the red square. He looked at his hand. He looked one last time at the numbers that had been his weather for years. Then he clicked. The room changed in an instant, the way a fairground feels when the generator is turned off. The hum went away. The timer stopped its march and became a square of indifferent gray. The ring light still glowed, but felt suddenly like a lamp, not a sun. Outside, a motorcycle passed, and then was gone, the first real sound we had heard in an hour. He sat very still. His wife put a hand on his shoulder, then took it away. then put it back as if the shoulder were hot and she wasn't sure whether to hold or hover. "You killed the stream," he said to me, half awe, half accusation, but not angry, not truly. Awe at the fact that a thing he had always ridden like a river could, in fact, be stepped out of onto a bank where grass grew. Accusation at himself for not having seen that the bank existed. "I asked you to end it," I said. "You did." I pointed at the screen. "That was your hand?" He nodded slowly. His eyes were wet in a way that did not threaten to spill. "Why does stopping feel like jumping?" he asked, a small, bewildered laugh caught in the question. "Because speed is a drug," I said, "and sobriety is a fall at first." I reached across and pressed the tag, face down, the ink hidden, flat with my palm. "But you will like what you find standing on the other side." His wife exhaled, long. The kind of breath people don't know they have been holding until someone in the room gives them permission to let it go. She looked at me with a mixture I could read: gratitude for the save, annoyance at the cost, curiosity about the clause, a note to herself to ask me later about the document and the second floor and why men write small promises in large words. "We'll draft something," she murmured. "An apology, a reflection. We'll pin it tomorrow." Her voice was professional again, but the edge was gone. He pushed the chair back and stood. The hush of the room had become gentle now, not punitive. He looked at me across the small desk we had sanded together, once in a yard, where the sun made everything smell like fresh wood and hope. The paper tag lay between us like an old joke that had finally learned it was not funny. He opened his arms the way boys do when they are too old to ask out loud. I stood and met him. When his forehead touched my shoulder, I remembered the weight of him asleep, the paper crown sliding down, the kitchen light at 2 a.m, the spoon against steel, the soft voice that is gone and somehow not gone at all. "We'll talk," I said into his hair. "Not as a show, as a house." He nodded, he stepped back. He wiped his eyes with the heel of his hand and laughed at himself because that is how he rescues his pride. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll lose subs." "Maybe," I said, "we'll keep our name." He glanced at the dark screen as if it might come back to life and tell him it agreed. It stayed dark and a little smug, the way objects are when they have been turned off mid-sentence. He picked up the tag and ran his thumb over the glue, now tired and dull. He held it up. "Can I keep this?" he asked, a boy again, wanting to collect the thing that hurt him because it will remind him not to pick it up next time. "You can," I said, "but write on the back before you do." He looked at me, curious. "Write today's date," I said. "And one sentence, respect is the priority." He nodded like a student receiving the day's work. He found a pen, he wrote slowly, he blew on the ink. He stuck the tag to the edge of the monitor where only he would see it when the ring light was off and the room belonged to just us and the night. "Tomorrow," he said again, steadier now, "we write the pin." He looked at his wife. She nodded. He glanced at me. "And I call them," he added, meaning the sponsor, meaning the people who picked up when my number buzzed and asked for a word about a room with a camera. He swallowed. "I'll tell them we know the line. Tell them we know the difference," I said, "between a joke and a wound." He closed his eyes and let that settle. When he opened them, the brand glimmer had softened into something with a color I recognized from before the lights. He powered down the ring light. The room fell into a kind of honest dusk. Without the halo, he looked less like a poster and more like my son. We stood in that gentler air and listened to the house. It made the sounds houses make when they are relieved. A pipe ticked, the refrigerator sighed, a clock in another room remembered to be loud. Through the window, the city did its slow late-night breathing, cars like brief thoughts, a siren far away, a neighbor laughing as if she had been given the good news of a small blessing, warm bread, a message returned, the rain finally starting. "We'll eat," I said, because hunger shows up when adrenaline leaves. He laughed, surprised at how quickly the ordinary reclaims you after you step off a stage. "We'll eat," he echoed. He looked at the dark monitor one more time, as if expecting it to accuse him of betrayal. It didn't. Machines don't judge, they just obey. Tonight, for once, he had not obeyed the red square. He had obeyed an older command. "Thank you," he said suddenly, and his voice had no glare in it. For not embarrassing me. It was a strange word given the night. He meant, for saving me without making me small. "You saved yourself," I said. I only pointed at the... Sure. He smiled, tired and clean. He reached for the switch that would cut power to the last little LEDs. Before he flicked it, he touched the edge of the tag and read his own handwriting. Respect is the priority. Then he turned the room dark and we walked toward the kitchen, where the light is always kinder and the stories are only told to the people who have to carry them. We ate in the kitchen because kitchens forgive you faster than living rooms do. The light above the table was soft and yellow, not bright like the ring. He took plates down without talking, and I found the pan and warmed yesterday's curry. The sound of the spoon against the steel pot steadied the air the way a heartbeat steadies a room after a shout. He set 3 glasses out and filled them halfway, careful, the way he used to pour water for his mother when she was too tired to lift the jug. We sat. The first few bites tasted like nothing because our mouths were still full of the show. Then the spice reached us and our shoulders loosened a little. He looked up, then down, then up again. I didn't mean to make you small, he said. I nodded once because the sentence was the work. You made the room loud, I answered, and forgot it was our house. He took that in. We ate. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a neighbor laughed the laugh of someone whose day ended softly, with a joke told to one face, not 1,000. We talked about tomorrow without making it feel like a punishment. He wanted to know how to say sorry in a way that didn't sound like a stunt. I told him the trick is to speak as if the mic is off. Write it for one person, I said. Write it for the boy under the blanket in Multan, or for your mother. His wife opened a notes app and started typing, practical even when the air still carried the echo of a crowd. Pin it on the community tab when you wake, she said, not because numbers like mornings, but because truth does. I told him not to use the word if. Don't write if anyone was hurt. Say, I hurt someone. Don't stack jokes around the apology like cushions. Let it stand on its feet. He nodded, chewing, swallowing, listening the way he used to listen when I taught him how to knot a tie, and he wanted to get it right the first time, so he wouldn't have to ask again. When the dishes were in the sink and the counters wiped, he called the sponsor. I stood at the far end of the counter and looked out through the window screen at a patch of night that smelled faintly of dust and rain. He put it on speaker so none of us had to pretend we weren't listening. The sponsor picked up on the first ring, which told me a lot. Men who don't respect you make you wait. Men who do, don't. My son said he wanted to thank them for coming on, and then he said he wanted to apologize for the tone. He said it in a voice that had no varnish. The sponsor listened, didn't jump in to rescue him, didn't say, it's fine. He let the apology be heard. Then he said, you closed well. My son breathed. The sponsor added, we value rooms where family isn't a punchline. There it was, the clause said the long way. My son said, we know the line. The sponsor said, we'll send the year, and you could hear the smile in his voice without seeing it. He told my son to sleep. He said my name again, and the way he said it made the room feel like a place where men shake hands and mean it even over a phone. Measure twice, he said. I said, sleep twice. And he laughed, and the call ended as cleanly as it had begun. We wrote the pin together, but the words were his. He typed, and I watched his back straighten as the sentences chose him instead of the other way around. He started with the same question I had asked at the top of the stream. Where are you watching from? Because he wanted to pull the room back into rooms. Then he wrote, I turned my father into a joke tonight. I won't do that again. He wrote, respect is the priority. He wrote, I cut the stream when I should have cut the bit. He wrote, I'm sorry. No if, no cushions. His wife trimmed 2 extra words and moved 1 comma and said, don't end on a brand, end on a promise. He ended with, this channel will not trade family for reach. He looked at me before he hit post, not for permission, but for witness. I nodded. He pushed it. The phone buzzed in his hand with the first replies, then buzzed again, then became a small, bright animal that wanted to keep running. He put it face down on the table and let it shake. I woke before dawn, as I always do, because old men keep time with birds without meaning to. The house was quiet in the honest way. A house is quiet when everyone inside has told the truth, even if that truth was late. I made tea and stood by the window while the city yawned. The street below was a page turning slowly. 1 motorbike, then 2. A woman opening a shutter. A boy in a school shirt walking like he had a song in his pocket. I thought about the first floor I ever helped lay. Dust in my hair, the sun sticking to my neck. The way the steel made the whole world sound like a low bell. I thought about my wife at the kitchen table braiding our son's hair when it was still long enough to braid, telling him that every joke has a price and he should spend wisely. I took the bread I'd bought the night before out of its paper and warmed 2 slices, then 3, because when boys apologize, they get hungry. By 9, the pin had grown its own legs. Some comments stood tall beside it and held it up. Some tried to climb on top and ride it into a new joke. That is the way of crowds. He didn't read them all. He read enough to learn where the wind was coming from, and then closed the window so it wouldn't knock anything over. At 10, he opened the camera, not to go live, but to record a short, quiet video with no music and no cuts. He spoke as if he were telling one friend that he had broken a glass and had swept it up and was buying a new one. He said, "I won't ask you to forgive me. I'll ask you to watch." He said, "Clips made it look like the joke was small. It wasn't. I know that now." He said, "My dad told me we are not luggage. We are the journey." He paused and let the silence hold his face. Then he turned off the camera and sent the file. His wife scheduled it to go up when the sun in California matched the sun in Karachi, because sometimes you choose a clock that makes the whole map feel fair. He didn't invite me on the next stream, and I didn't offer to come. He opened with the apology again, live this time, because people respect you more when you will say it to their faces twice. He said there would be a new rule. No roasting family, no exceptions, no, it's just content. He deleted a few comments himself to feel how it feels to keep your own gate. Then he played a game, a simple one, bright colors, small stakes. He laughed, but in the spaces between his laughter, you could hear him measuring. The numbers dipped and then held and then, strangely, began to climb again. Not like a fire, more like a tide. People typed from rooftops and buses and kitchens. The boy in Multan wrote that his blanket had become a tent, and he had made it bigger. My son read that one out loud and smiled in the old way, the way he used to smile at his mother's knitting. In the afternoon, he came into my room with a small box. "I found this in the drawer," he said, as if he had discovered a relic. Inside was the paper crown from the 6th birthday party, faded and soft at the tips. He held it with both hands, careful, the way boys hold new birds. "I kept it," I said, "because it made everything simple." He nodded. He didn't ask me to put it on. He didn't try to turn it into content. He set it on the dresser, and we looked at it like people look at a photo of a house they used to live in. Then he took the luggage tag off the edge of his monitor and turned it over to show me what he had written in his own hand. The date and the sentence. Respect is the priority. He had underlined priority once. He smiled, a small, private smile that was not for a clip or a reel. "I thought about writing, 'We are the journey,'" he said, "but I wanted the thing that makes it true." That evening, we called the sponsor again, not to talk about the contract, but to talk about the clause behind the clause. We told them we would refuse any briefs that asked for edgy family moments, the phrase marketers use when they mean harm with sparkle. They agreed. They said they had put a sentence in their own notes. "Don't confuse noise with growth." I told them that sentence would save them more money than any ad. We laughed like men who have both been right and wrong enough times to be tired of proving anything. When we hung up, my son stood by the window with me and watched the first stars try their best through city dust. "I thought cutting would kill me," he said. "It didn't." I said, "You killed the stream. You saved the show." He let that settle in him in layers, the way bread takes butter and then takes honey. We didn't talk about lawyers or clauses after that. We talked about the next video, about a way to bring the chat back into rooms without bringing them into our kitchen. He wrote a prompt on a whiteboard. "Tell me where you're watching from and something good that happened to you today." And underneath it, in smaller letters, he wrote 3 words. "Hold the line." He didn't need me to tell him what that meant anymore. He had felt it in his hand when he clicked. He had felt it in his chest when the room went quiet the right way. At night, I sat on the balcony with a shawl that still carried a phantom of my wife's scent and listened to the city turn its pages. He joined me with 2 cups of tea and said nothing for a while, because the easiest words to say are the ones you don't have to. After a time, he said, "You were right to make me stop." I said, "You were brave to do it." He said, "I thought bravery looked like never backing down." I said, "Sometimes it looks like standing up and leaving." He laughed, a small sound. "Will I lose them for it?" he asked, meaning the crowd. I said, You will lose the ones who wanted to see you throw your own house at the wall. Those are not losses. Before I slept, I wrote him a note on a page torn from an old ledger. I wrote 4 lines his mother and I used to keep on the fridge when money was thin and tempers short. Measure twice. Speak once. Keep the house loud with kindness. We are the journey. I folded it and slid it under the tag at the edge of his monitor, so that when he turned the lights on tomorrow and the ring glowed and the lens became a small black world again, the first thing he would see would not be his face, but his map. This is where I end it for you if you've stayed with me this long. In a house that is quiet in the good way, with a boy who is a man now, in a city that smells like dust and bread and old promises kept. We did not win by shouting. We did not win by punishing. We won by choosing the floor over the wave, the name over the number, the promise over the laugh. He called me Luggage, and the world clapped. A sponsor said my name, and the room listened. I asked my son to cut the stream, and he did. He killed it. He saved us. In the soft afterlight, we wrote a line and decided to keep it. If this story meant something to you, tell me where you're watching from, and tell me one good thing that happened to you today. Share this with someone who needs a quieter kind of courage. If you want more stories told this way, subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Your words keep the lights on, but your listening keeps the house standing.